I'm gonna take this drawing and make it realistic using Photoshop. And I don't know exactly what this is, but it's definitely cursed, and I got this idea from Benny Productions. But I'll first make the animal itself realistic, and then throw that into a cool looking environment to bring it to life even more. So let's hop into Photoshop and start designing. I'll start by taking a deer and warping the body to match the drawing. And now let's just go around the outside and clean it up a bit to match it even better. I am going to use a fur brush on the front part though, but let's just take this leg from a different deer and warp that into position as well. And then just do the same thing with the other leg, just warping it until it looks good. Now let's add this armadillo tail that looks pretty similar to the drawing. And once again, let's use warp to, well, warp it. I grabbed another deer and warped that into place in the head area, then started drawing it in and blending it in with the rest of the body. I feel like I'm Frankenstein putting all these animals together into one creature. But to help it all feel more connected, let's go around the body with a few shadows to bring it even more together. Now let's recreate the shapes for the beak with the pen tool, which was pretty simple, but now let's draw in these little nostrils like the drawing has. Let's color in the mouth with a pink color and add the tongue with a different color. But let me go back to the nostrils for a second so I can go and add some shadows and then erase a bit near the edge, which makes it look like there's a bump or a little raised area. Then I'll go around and add some more shadows to give it some more depth and contrast. Let's put a tongue texture on the tongue and a mouth texture on the mouth. I am going to put this dirt on the beak for some extra texture before taking this naked rat, which is already pretty terrifying. But let's go around and cut out a few of its legs before putting those legs in the same position as the drawing. And the feet aren't exactly the same as the drawing, but I still think it fits the vibe of the drawing. But I only added the bottom half of the legs, so let's cut out some more of that rat and warp that piece to fill in the back leg, and then blend them together. Then I'll basically repeat that process with all the other legs, as well as adding some shadows at the top and around some other parts as well. Now let's grab this image of a cat and take some of its arm, and let's see if you can guess where I'm going to use this. If you guessed C, you're wrong. The answer is B. I'm gonna put it under the eyes. I'll change the color of those to match with the rest of the creature a little bit better, and then add some shadows on it. Now let's add some eyeballs above those, and I'll color in the eyelid on the right eye, just matching the curve of the eye, and then do that with the left one. For the ears, I'm not actually going to be using another animal part. I'm actually going to use some mushroom stems and match them with the drawing. I'll take this other mushroom and erase everything except for the head and warp it a bit to fit the shape a little bit better. Now let's fade the other part of the ear on top of it to connect them and make it look like one weird ear thing. I did go around and add some more shadows, but that's kind of boring. So after that, I went back to the cat from earlier and took its ear to warp into the ear of the drawing and cleaned up the edges. I also added some more skin to the back of it to give it the same roundness as the other ear. And now the creature is basically done, but if we're gonna be real, it doesn't really look that good yet. But that's because there's nothing around it and no real lighting. So the next thing we need to do is work on the environment. So let's start by extending our canvas and adding this snowy cave behind our animal. Now let's just use the pen tool to cut the top half out. I'll copy the ground layer and add it to the sides before warping them into a better shape. After that, I'll blend the ground with the cave walls so it looks more realistic. And once that looks good, I'll drop in this nice background image behind the cave. Oh, and don't forget to do your homework tonight. You just need to like and subscribe, or, you know, we're gonna have to call your parents. But right now, these two images don't really match at all because one is like a desert and one is a snowy cave. So let's make a few edits. First, let's just remove this tree because we're trying to focus on our animal instead of the nature around it. Next, I'll extend the ground image because it's not long enough. Which brings me to the next step, and that is combining these two areas together. Now that we've done that, it still looks pretty bad. So let's add some orange highlights onto the sides of the cave to help match the lighting with the rest of the image. Once that's done, I'll make a few small edits to the ground, but this is what we have so far, which is okay, but if you zoom in, you can start to notice a lot of color noise, which is common in photography, but this just looks really bad. So to fix that, I'll go to the camera raw filter and reduce the color noise, but I'm also going to go around the edges of the cave using a solid white brush. Since the sun is blasting straight into the entrance, we'd get some harsh rim lighting along those cave walls. But now I think it's time we bring our cursed little creature back into the scene and start blending it into the environment. First, let's just go around the feet with some soft shadows, because next I'm going to duplicate the entire animal and turn it into a shadow. Then I'll add a color adjustment layer onto the animal itself, because the colors don't really match at all. I'll add that in with a soft brush around the edges, but something else that needs to happen around the edge is some orange highlights, but I don't really need to explain too much about that, so let's speed it up. Here's what we have now, which is definitely a lot better, but one thing that is bothering me is how bright the animal is, because realistically, inside of a cave where the light is facing directly at the camera, this side of the animal would be pretty dark. But I obviously want to show off the animal and not just have it hiding in the shadows. So to help with both of those problems, I added this exposure layer, which I do think fixes the problem. But another problem I have is the sun, because like I said, it's facing directly at us, which is technically a camera. But when you take a picture of the sun, you get these light flares. This happens because the sunlight hits the camera lens, and that super bright light reflects off of the multiple layers of glass that's inside the lens, which creates those glowing rings or smears across the image. So I added a lens flare right in front of the sun, which honestly didn't really do what I wanted, but I did end up liking this part that brightened up the area below it. So I added another lens flare, but this time erased everything I didn't want and just kept the part that I thought looked cool. After that, I threw in some floating dust particles across the image to add some more atmosphere and depth. And finally, I added a camera raw filter over everything to tie it all together and give it that final cinematic look. So this is our realistic version of the drawing. Give this a rating out of 5 in the comments and if I should do this again. And don't forget to press the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.